Renee says that my life is a blessing, and I'm a miracle. Some would believe that, and some would not. Dad and Mom always brought Keith and I to church. We were always in church. We were born. Till now. And you know, I walked with him for a long time. But he never left my side. I was very rebellious. I wanted to do my own thing, wanted to go where I wanted to go, wanted to hang with people I wanted to hang with, and I just, whatever Mom and Dad said, I did the exact opposite. And they say that twins are the opposite. It is very true, because my brother was the most laid back. He never did anything. Keith was, I was the problem child. I always gave Mom and Dad a hard time. And Keith just was there always too. My dad all the time would say, get in the Ford, Keith, and go pick up your sister. I don't know where she is, but go find her. Get in the truck and go pick her up. Keith is always that go-to for me. But I left home when I was 18, and I got my own place, and I got into a really bad car accident in 1986. And I was being rebellious, and I thought running away was the thing to do, and it wasn't. I went and I stayed with my friends, and we were going out that night up to Cats and Waterbury. And I know some of you may be familiar where Central High School is. Well, you know that road that goes up Route 69. We were going up toward Wolcott, and a driver was coming down that road, and his wife was in the passenger seat, and she was pregnant. And he was speeding, and he hit my side of the car head on, and it took the jaws of life to get me out of the car. I don't know, I didn't know then how I got out of that car, but I do know now how I got out of that car. I didn't know then. When my brother came, he couldn't believe that I actually made it out of the car, because the whole side of my side was all smashed. I was in the passenger side, and thank the Lord, on the other end of it, the wife that was pregnant, she was okay. So I thank the Lord for that. But that was in 1986. And again, I knew God, but didn't know the whole aspects. You know, I didn't know that he was the one that said, I got something better for you. You're not, you know, I'm not ready for you yet. And then it didn't end there. In 1987, I got into another bad car accident, drinking and driving. And I was coming off the highway, and exactly a mile away from my house, I crossed over this little bridge, and I fell asleep at the wheel, and I hit a telephone pole head on. And my first car my dad bought me, my first Chevy Chevette, my first car, the car was demolished. There was nobody in the car with me. My father went to the scene and didn't know how I even made it out of that car accident. My jaw was broke in 6 places. My parents were happy because my jaw was wired for 6 to 8 weeks. So I couldn't talk, which again, they were pleased, and my brother most of all. And I had broke my femur right in half. And Cindy knows all too well about your femur. It's a big giant, and for running, it's like key. So when I had broke it, I have a plate and 7 screws in my leg. And in the doctor's office, my father was with me, and at the time, my orthopedic was Dr. Bomar, which he no longer is in practice, but He had told me that I would never walk normal and I would always have a limp. And my father looked at him and goes, if anybody's going to walk again and not have a limp, it's going to be Karleen. She's never going to have anything. But I knew it wasn't, when I didn't have the limp or walking, I didn't think, oh yeah, that was God. I just thought, I'm young, my bones are healing, and you know, I'm good to go. So that was in 1987. And I wasn't still living. And I'm holding it too close. I'm using my hands more than mine. And 87 was that, and then I still wasn't walking the way I should be walking, but I always felt that there was more for me. I didn't know the exact aspects of it, but I always knew there was something more. And in 1989, I got married in this church by Pastor Monzon to Caleb, and we had Brittany. And when Brittany was born, Brittany had swallowed some of my agnomic fluid, the sac that's around the baby, and she had contracted meningitis. And the pastor Tilly knows about that. And I had her on August 14th, and they had said that she wasn't going to make it. She probably wouldn't make it. She had all these tubes on her, around her head. She was in a little incubator. I literally slept there. I literally never left the hospital. Pastor Tilly had came and prayed for Brittany. And the week before Labor Day, they had told me that I was able to bring her home, but they wanted to do another brain scan of Brittany to make sure that everything was good. And when they did the brain scan of her, her brain was clear. She had nothing wrong with her. That was then. I'm not talking now, but that was then. And but her brain was clear. There was no signs of anything. There was, I know the pastor remembers that. So again, there was another situation that the Lord, and I knew, but I didn't know. I just felt like, okay, she's a baby and God loves all babies and he's going to touch Britt. And, you know, so that was another situation. And then I had gotten married, and that relationship didn't really go as planned. And then just throughout the years, I just was doing my own thing. Wasn't the best mom that I could be, wasn't always there. When I had gotten divorced, the only way that I could explain it, and Brian gets it and my mother understands it, but it was like a pit bull that got its chains off. It was just, it wasn't the best marriage situation. And so throughout the years, I just kept doing my own thing and doing my own thing. And I always felt like there was something, like Brian said, it was pulling me, like, wake up, Karleen, smell the coffee. What's going on? You know, I'm here, you know, and I just kept just doing what I was doing. And I was going to say the same story Brian said, but I'm not going to repeat that all. But I truly believe that the Lord, yes, the Lord doesn't go to bars and the Lord doesn't go to dark places. However, I do believe that that day, it was a day for me to meet Brian, because Brian and I dated back in 1982. We have known each other forever, it seems. And granted, when Brian and I got together, we didn't always come to church. And yes, my mother, you know, love her to pieces. She would, now my thing was, it was very bizarre because my mother would come over and say, you know, you and Brian should really start going to church. You know, why don't you guys start going to church? And I would look at her and I go, just curious, Ma, do you approach Keith in this manner? I mean, do you ask Keith, you know, because Keith was brought up in the church, and I know the Lord's going to bring my brother back. I know that. But she never, it was never, or I would continue to say this to her and she would say, I'm not going there. I'm not going to listen to Keith. I'm not going there. I'm not asking him. God will get him in the church, But my mother always, 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 always persisted with me and Brian. And then Brian and I, we were that go to church at Christmas, go to church at Mother's Day, go to that church at Easter. And all of a sudden, this is my church and I'm very comfortable in this church. And all of a sudden, I just felt like I wanted to get baptized. I felt that I really needed to make it right with God, because the running got me absolutely nowhere. It got me into worse situations that there was always consequences. And granted, you always have consequences in life, but at least when you have the Lord and something happens, at least you have somebody to pick you up. When if you don't, you have yourself, and you find yourself in dark areas and places you don't want to go. So I came back to church, Brian and we both got baptized. Sister Tilly gave me my first Bible, which I still have. It was March 6th of 2012 is when you gave me that Bible. And Brian and I had been coming to this church, and granted, we fall short, we make mistakes, but I know without a doubt that the Lord pulled me out of the world. I know that without a doubt, because when you're in the world, you have a lot of friends, and when you get out of that world, I have an abundance of Christian friends, but you sort of miss that connection. You're like, where are all your friends? All your friends are gone because you're not at the bars and you're not doing what they're doing. So, Brian and I didn't, to this day, we really don't have a lot of friends. We have our Christian family, but we know we can't get together with those friends because those friends are doing what we no longer want to be a part of. So, Brian and I, sometimes it's heartbreaking because, you get so used to that life, and then the Lord takes you out of that life for something better. But it's so ironic that at point till you're fully with God, you still have that, I miss that. I miss my friends. Because the majority of the people we used to hang out with are friends we went to high school with, went to grammar school with, but I don't regret any moment of the Lord taking me and Brian out of that world. I don't regret it. I am so thankful for that. And, the Lord has forgiven me of all my sins. And the sin that he's forgiven me for, that I pray for Brittany, that she will realize that, I made mistakes with her, that the Lord will awaken Brittany not to make the same mistakes with Journey and Serenity. And I know when I got baptized that whatever I did, it's under the blood. It is gone. It is no longer part of me. And like the Lord says, he forgives, and it's in the sea of forgetfulness. He doesn't bring it up. It's gone. So it's taken me a long time to not let Brittany or things in my past, like, oh yeah, I could have done that better. You're absolutely right. I could have done that better, but you know what? I'm not going to go back there because the Lord's forgiven me. So that's all I need to know. You're going to find it in your way to forgive me, but the most important thing is God's forgiven me. So I'm, I can't dwell on that anymore. And, all I can do from this point forward is make it right and to do the best I can do. And lastly, the one big thing the Lord brought me through, and it was the hardest thing of my life, was my father. That was, I wouldn't wish that on anyone,
to go through that. ALS is awful. It's just awful. And when Dad came home, Brian wanted to prepare me when I was at work. And to go back, the Lord had his hand in this whole situation. He had it from the very beginning, because if Brian and my brother would have waited one more week before going to get Dad, Dad would have died in his apartment. So I know, I didn't know it then. And, but I knew the Lord had his hand on that. And going through that with Dad, I was at work, and Brian and Keith had just gotten home from Georgia. And Brian called me, and he wanted to prepare me, because as many of you guys know, my father was my end all. He was my best friend. And I've always used to see my father healthy and strong. And even when he was sick, he was never sick. Like, Dad, you're not feeling well? No, I don't need to go see a doctor. He was just very stubborn in that manner. So when Brian called me, Brian said, Karleen, I just want you to prepare yourself when you come home to see your dad. And he's lost a lot of weight. And so when I was driving home, I was just crying and crying and crying and crying to the Lord, like, Lord, please just give me peace when I walk in that door. Don't let me have a nervous breakdown in that house with Dad sitting there, because that won't be good. And just give me peace that when I walk in that house, I'm just going to go up to him and hug him. And, it is, So I walked into the house, and I'm telling you, church, it was like I was just seeing my father all over again. There was I didn't lose it. I went up to him, I hugged him, and I think he knew it took a lot for me to but Dad was very sick. And when he was diagnosed with ALS, it was awful. It was horrific. I wouldn't recommend, I can't imagine anybody in our church ever having to go through what me and my family went through with my dad. But I prayed and prayed and prayed, Lord, I asked you to give me more time with my father. And I didn't know at the time he had ALS. This is when Dad first came home. And I prayed and prayed, Dad, please, Lord, please give me more time with Dad. So not only he gave me more time with Dad, and I say this because it's the truth, and I don't say it to disrespect the Lord in any manner. It was not the way I wanted to spend my time with my father, watching him die. I mean, I said to the Lord, I said, I asked you for more time, but I was better off not to ask. At one point, I was just like, but what the Lord had in mind was he gave me more time with my dad for me to get wisdom and knowledge to take care of him. Brian and I took care of Dad. He gave me the wisdom to learn different things, how to take care of him with his ventilator, with his feeding tube. Dad was bedridden, so our room looked like a hospital room. The Lord gave me strength each and every day to handle the nurses and the doctors and everybody that was coming in and out of that house. And he gave me conversations with Dad. I was like the guru of the reading of the lips, because that's all Dad could do. But Dad and I would have in-depth conversations. And so the Lord walked me through that. He made me strong through that. Dad found peace with the pastor. He found peace with Rick. I remember when he was at Gaylord, he had asked me to have the pastor come see him. And I I didn't know if it was the medication. I didn't know, because never would I have expected my father to say to me, can you call Pastor Tilly? Never. I would have never. And I said, you sure? And he said, yes, I want to see Pastor Tilly and Sister Tilly. So Pastor Tilly and Sister Tilly came to Gaylord to see Dad. And my father looked at the pastor and he said, I'm asking you for forgiveness. So he asked the pastor to forgive him. And I knew at that moment that God was in it, because there's no way my father would have did that. And the pastor looked at Dad and said, it's all forgiven, George. And they hugged, and I knew right then, that was the moment I knew, okay, Lord, I get what you're doing. I understand now what you're doing. Dad made peace with my mother through all of that, through all the divorce and through all that situation. And my father had a significant other for a long period of time. And her and I weren't always in cahoots with each other. But she and I made peace at the end, because she got to see how much I loved Dad, how I took care of my father, how I was there through everything. So her and I made peace, and her and my mother made peace. And Dad made peace with Rick. And that's a miracle in itself as well. And so it was heartbreaking, but it was a blessing in the same sentence. And he made peace with my brother. And this makes me laugh because it was sort of funny. But in the room, when he was making peace with Keith, Dad and I were always tight, no matter what the situation was. Dad and I, he knew more about me than my mother to this day. God knows all. My mother, no. So when he was making peace with my brother, my dad had looked at Keith and said, oh, Keith goes, well, Dad, what about Karleen? And Dad looked at Keith and said, I don't need to make peace with your sister. Me and your sister are good. And I'm not going to repeat Keith's comments in that room. I will not, but the Lord blessed me with the best earthly father anybody could have asked for. I mean, I couldn't have been blessed with a better mom and dad. And at the very end, when Dad, we were in the hospital and they were, giving him the morphine and everything. Me and my mom were there. Everybody was there, actually. And, when you have hospice, and it's not sometimes the most beautifulest thing, but the music therapy in my father's room for hospice was so peaceful. Dad wanted Jimmy Swaggart, and I can't remember the song. There was quite a few songs by Jimmy Swaggart that Dad absolutely loved, and it was the old gospel pastor, and he absolutely loved it. And the music therapist just kept playing this one song like over and over, and everybody was like, okay, but Dad was just there, and he was just peaceful. And at the end, he looked at me and Mom, and he said, you and Karleen, you and Dixie are going to be okay because you have God. My father would have never said that. He would have never said that. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that my father is in heaven. I know he is. And he doesn't have ALS anymore. And he's in a better place than we are. And I want to thank God for all of his mercy and his grace on my life, because I don't know where I would be without God. And I know, and I pray one day that my brother's up here and my brother's giving his testimony, because my brother knows the way. And I believe it. I believe that I'm gonna see Dad in heaven. Renee is gonna see her mom or dad. We're all gonna see our family in heaven. And I just thank God for my life. And I thank God for this church. And I thank you all for your prayers. And I love you and Sister Pastor Tilly. Thank you.
Amen. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord.